Good morning and welcome to Game Plan College's virtual information session with NC State. My name is Rachel Worsham and I'm a post-secondary access advisor with the Emily K Center. I'm here with my colleagues Jackie and Christina, who are also post-secondary access advisors. Today we are talking to Kaylee Richter, who is an admissions counselor at NC State. As we're going through this, if you have any questions, please feel free to hover over the bottom of your screen and click the chat box. You can type your questions in there as we're going, and then at the end, we will take time to answer all of your questions. So without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to Kaylee.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. So what I'm going to do today is share with you all a little information about NC State. We'll talk about what we have to offer, what makes us unique, and then we'll also talk more specifically about the admissions review process. So thank you all for being flexible and joining me for a virtual session. Again, my name is Kaylee Richter and I'm one of our counselors. I've been in the office for about 2.5 years now, and I also graduated from NC State in 2016. So if you have any student life questions, happy to talk through that as well. So NC State University is located in Raleigh, the capital of North Carolina. Raleigh is consistently ranked one of the best places to live and work in the United States. So essentially it offers a really great centralized location. We're about 3 hours from the beach and about 3 hours from the mountains. And we're just about 30 to 45 minutes away from Durham, depending on how far you're going. And then NC State is also right next to downtown Raleigh, like I mentioned, where there are a lot of internship and co-op opportunities for students. So there are a lot of different buildings, and then a lot of our students, because of the proximity, can really take advantage of those resources. In terms of NC State, we are the largest institution in North Carolina. So we have over 36,000 total students and about 24,000 undergraduates. So when you're going through the college search process, thinking about what campus size you prefer, keeping in mind that NC State is going to be a larger campus is something good to think about. We're also a STEM school, so you'll hear a bit about our science, technology, engineering, and math programs as we go through, but we do offer over 100 majors in total. And about 43% of our students are in non-STEM fields. So if you like STEM, that's great. If not, there's still a ton of opportunities for you here. And then I'll talk about research in a little bit as well, but NC State is also one of 2 public research intensive institutions in North Carolina. So there's a lot of great opportunity for students to do research as well. So NC State is made up of 3 different areas of campus, and the first one that I'll talk a little bit about today is main campus. So this is where most of our first year students will live. Housing is a requirement on campus for all first year students, and our residence halls are located all around our main campus. This is also where students will take a lot of those general education courses. So especially in your first year and some in your second year, you'll be taking larger courses. So there may be 100 or 200 students in a lecture hall, but then typically once you get into those more major specific classes, you'll experience a smaller class size. And then one last thing to point out about main campus is that this is also where we have a ton of different hubs for student life. So the Tally Student Union is the building that you see in the picture on the screen. And within that building, we have dining options, study spaces, and then also support centers for students. And then finally, at the very background of the picture, you can see the downtown Raleigh skyline. So it really is just right down the road from our campus. And there are a lot of different public transportation options that can take you to and from if you do have an internship or would like to volunteer in that area. And then our second area of campus is called Centennial Campus. So this is home to the College of Engineering and the College of Textiles. So if any of you all listening in are interested in either of those programs, you'd likely spend some of your time on Centennial Campus. So we do have some classroom buildings here for those programs, and there are also residence halls and other resources as well. Centennial Campus is also NC State's research campus. So we have over 100 different research facilities, as well as government agencies and other organizations here. So it's another great spot to look for internships and co-ops if that's something that you're wanting to get involved in. A couple other things to note in the picture here. At the very background of the picture, you'll see our Lake Raleigh. So students can fish, kayak, paddleboard, pretty much do everything but swim in the lake, which is a really great recreational opportunity. And then right in front of Lake Raleigh, you'll see, it looks a little bit like a spaceship. It's Hunt Library. So that's one of NC State's newest libraries, and it has a really awesome feature when you walk in that's called the Book Bot. So if you were to ever walk through Hunt, or if anyone has, you'll notice there are not a whole lot of books laying around. And the reason for that is most of those books are kept in a climate-controlled vault that's called our Book Bot. So on the screen, you'll see a quick demo of how the Book Bot works. And the cool thing is when you go into Hunt Library, you can request a book and then actually watch as the Book Bot goes to retrieve that for you. It has capacity to hold about 2 million books, and right now there are 1.8 million in storage there. All right, and then finally, our last area of campus is Centennial Biomedical. This is where we house the College of Veterinary Medicine, which is a program that's ranked #4 in the nation. So it's definitely a really good choice if you are looking into veterinary school. One thing that's important to say is it is a graduate level program. So we don't have undergraduate classes located on this campus, but there are really great volunteer opportunities if that's something that you would like more information on during your time at NC State. Near this campus, there are 3 main facilities or buildings that NC State students use pretty frequently. One of those is Carter Finley Stadium, which is where our football team plays. And then we also have PNC Arena, which is where our men's basketball team plays. It's also where the Carolina Hurricanes play, if anyone's familiar with that hockey team. And then at PNC Arena, we also host commencement ceremonies for students at the start of the school year, as well as fun activities like concerts. And then finally, the NC State Fairgrounds are also right down the road from our veterinary campus. And then one last thing that I wanted to talk a little about are our pre-professional advising programs. So for students who are interested in medical school, law school, or veterinary school, when you come to NC State, you can choose whichever major you like, and we would connect you with someone in those pre-professional programs, and they'll basically guide you, help expose you to different volunteer opportunities or internship opportunities, and then also help you register for courses that are prerequisites for those graduate degrees, to make sure that you're set up when it's time to apply for those graduate programs. So I've talked a little about downtown Raleigh and Centennial Campus in terms of different organizations that students work with, but NC State is also located very near Research Triangle Park, which has a whole other group of organizations that students can intern with or partner with. And we have just a couple examples listed up on this screen here. Like Duke Energy, SAS, IBM, Amazon, and many others. So all of these opportunities really help connect students to job opportunities after graduation. So that's definitely one thing that's awesome about NC State's location is all of these partnerships and networks. And then NC State also has a career development center located on our campus. And with that center, they can definitely help you in finding internships. And then you can also use that center a year after you graduate if you're looking for jobs. So a lot of students will use that resource to get connected while they're on campus. A lot of times internships can really help in figuring out what it is you may be interested in doing. So those are definitely things we encourage our students to take advantage of. And then I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation that research is something that NC State takes part in and that we encourage our students to participate in. So NC State's motto is think and do the extraordinary. And we really feel that research is a way that students can really connect to that motto. So we have an undergraduate research center on our main campus, And basically in that center, students can look through a searchable database to see what kind of projects faculty members are working on, and then students can also join in on those research projects. And in terms of research, it really ranges across a bunch of different majors. So if you're in psychology, engineering, or even in natural resources, there are definitely ways that you can get connected to those research opportunities. And from a lot of the research that's been done from both current students and graduates of NC State, there have been over 135 different startups and spinoffs that have come out of that. So lots of different software companies, all sorts of stuff. And just one that I'm going to highlight today is actually an app that one of our graduates created called Translock. So Translock is an app that helps students navigate NC State's bus system. So to help students get from one building to another or one campus to another, we have an app called Translock. And basically you can see all of the different bus routes. And then once you're on the bus, it'll even tell you like which stop you may want to get off at, depending on where you're trying to go. And it does also tell you how long it'll take before a bus approaches your stop. So that can definitely make the process of getting to and from different classes a lot more easy. And then this app is also used by a lot of institutions around the US now, after it was created by a student. And in terms of involvement, we do have a lot of opportunities for students to study abroad, and that's definitely something I would encourage everyone to do if you have the opportunity. So with NC State, we have over 200 different study abroad programs in over 60 different countries. And then NC State also has a branch institution located in Prague, Czech Republic. So that institution is called the NC State European Center. And that can be a really great fit for students who are looking to get that study abroad experience, but still want to stay connected to NC State. So at the European Center, students are taught by NC State faculty and also study alongside other NC State students. In terms of length of study abroad, we have semester-long and year-long programs. And then we also have shorter term programs like a summer program or alternative spring break or fall break trips, which are usually a week or 10 days in length. So they're all really great options, and students can also get course credit depending on what classes they take abroad. When I was a student at NC State, I was able to do 2 different study abroad programs. So I did a 6-week study over the summer in Peru and actually had 2 NC State professors come abroad with a group of students to teach our classes. And then I also did a 6-month program in Costa Rica, which was much more independently structured. So it was kind of me just going on my own to study at the university there. So depending on your comfort level and interests, there's definitely a range of different things that you can do. And then much more locally on NC State's campus, there are over 700 different student organizations or clubs. And then NC State also hosts a lot of events throughout the year to engage students in these different clubs or organizations. So each year in the fall semester, in NC State's Brickyard, which is exactly what it sounds like, a big space that's full of bricks, NC State students will come out to raise money for Habitat for Humanity. And the event that they put on is week-long, and it's called Shackathon. And basically different clubs come out, they build a shack out of recyclable materials, and then they stay in that location throughout the week to raise money for the organization Habitat for Humanity. And then in the spring semester in the Brickyard, we have an event called Ag Week or Agriculture Week. And during this time, we do bring out livestock and farm animals that kind of just stay in the Brickyard. And it gives students the chance to interact with them and learn more about the importance of agriculture in North Carolina. So those are just 2 examples of organizations that we work with. And one of the ways that we showcase a lot of the different opportunities at NC State is through a big event that happens at the start of each school year called Packapalooza or Wolfpack Welcome Week. So during this time is when the Hillsborough Street, which is right next to NC State, is closed down. And different clubs come out to table and kind of show students what they can get involved with. So this is definitely the time where students can sign up to hear more about different clubs or organizations they're interested in, and then learn more about how to join them throughout the year. Usually at the end of Packapalooza, there's also a big concert, so it's a great way for students to get to know each other as well. All right, so we've talked about student life and NC State in general. So now we're going to talk a little more specifically about majors and then also how to apply to NC State. So I mentioned earlier that we have over 100 different majors. Up here on the screen, we have the top 10 programs that students were accepted into last year, just to give you all a feel for what kind of majors our students are choosing. So you'll see engineering up there, so that's definitely a program that's popular at NC State, as well as life sciences, business, but then a lot of other programs in other areas as well. Just one that I'm going to highlight today or talk a little more about is exploratory studies. So you'll see that's the second major up there. So we had about 20% of our students come in through exploratory studies last year. And basically with this program, students will get to explore a lot of different majors in their first year on campus. And then they also get a lot of one-on-one academic advising to help them determine their career goals and what major they may want to go into. And then it's usually after the year in exploratory studies that students will go ahead and declare a specific major. But it's definitely a great choice for students who are undecided or who maybe want a little more time to select a program that they're going to graduate with. Students can also double major or add minors once they're at NC State, and usually students will do at least a semester or a year of classes before they go through this process. And then in terms of the application process, there are a few different things that are required for NC State, and we'll kind of walk through what those are now. The first thing is the application. So NC State uses both the common application and the coalition application. So you can pick either one. We don't have a preference for which one you choose, but that'll be the first part of the process. The second requirement that we have is an $85 application fee, but we do accept fee waivers. So if you're eligible, check in with your high school counselor and have them send us that documentation and we can waive your application fee. The third requirement that NC State has are self-reported test scores. So on your application, you can directly put in there what your test scores are, and that's what we'll use during the review process. So basically, you don't have to send us official test scores until you receive your decision from NC State, and if you're accepted, if you plan to enroll, that's when you would send official scores. We do require the SAT or the ACT. So again, you can pick whichever you prefer. And then we do super score. So we'll take the highest score from each section if you've taken the SAT more than once, for example. And that'll be to give you the overall highest composite score possible. And then finally, the essay portion is not required for either the SAT or ACT. And then the fourth and final piece to completing your application would be your official high school transcript. And that would be sent typically directly from your high school counselor. If you are doing dual enrollment or taking college classes while in high school, as long as those college classes appear on your official transcript, that's what we need to review your application. And that's everything that you need. In terms of letters of recommendation, those are not required for NC State. And then there is a required essay, but it's built into the application, so you'll see it as you go through. And then in terms of deadlines, for the fall semester for freshmen, NC State offers two different deadlines. And our first that I'll talk about is referred to as early action. So the deadline for early action is November 1st, and students who apply by this date would hear back on January 30th. A couple notes about early action: it is non-binding, so you're not obligated to come to NC State if you're admitted early, but applying early does give you priority consideration for most of our merit-based scholarships. So we would definitely encourage you, if you're ready to submit by November 1st, to go with that date. And then if anyone is thinking about studio-based majors, so that would include art and design, graphic design, architecture, and other majors like that, you do have to apply by our November 1st deadline. And then there's also an additional essay and a required 10-piece art portfolio that you would submit by November 1st as well. And then our second deadline is regular decision. And this date is January 15th. And then students who apply by that deadline would receive their decision on March 30th. And then regardless of the date you apply to NC State, once you receive your decision, you have until May 1st to confirm your enrollment or to let us know whether or not you plan to attend. And so we'll talk a little now about the review process, so kind of what we look for in our applicants. So the first thing to know about NC State's review process is that it is holistic. So basically what that means is while academics are at the forefront of our review, there are a lot of other things that we take into consideration, and we'll kind of talk through those different factors now. So with academic achievement, we do like to see that students have A's and B's, typically more A's than B's, and that you're taking advanced level courses. So if your high school offers honors, AP, IB, dual enrollment, those types of courses, we definitely encourage you to get involved. Not only do they look really strong on your transcript, but in a lot of cases, they also show that you're able to perform at the college level. And those exams from either AP, IB, or your dual enrollment classes can also give you credit for NC State classes before you're on campus, which is a great benefit. The second thing that we look at would be your highest SAT or ACT composite score. So there's not a minimum requirement that we have, but last year the middle 50% of students scored between a 1270 and a 1410 on the SAT, and between a 27 and a 32 on the ACT. So that's just the middle 50% to give you an idea of where the middle of our admitted students fell last year. But we do admit, or did admit, 25% of students below and above that range. And then something else we look at is the interest in the program you're applying for. So at NC State, when you're filling out the application, you can pick a first choice and a second choice major, and we always recommend you pick 2 different majors. The reason for that is if you're not as competitive for your first choice, we will review you again for your second choice major. So it's always a good idea to put 2 different options. And then there is a section on the application that will ask that you explain why you're applying for that program. And we definitely encourage you to talk about your interest in both that first and second choice. We'll also look at your accomplishments, not only within, but also outside of the classroom. So we definitely encourage you to share with us what you're involved in. So if that's sports, working full-time or part-time, providing childcare at home, participating in clubs or volunteer service, we definitely encourage you to share that with us. And then another piece is going to be background and opportunities. So with this, it has a lot to do with looking at students in the context of their high school. So for example, if you're in a rural high school, or if your school doesn't offer a lot of advanced courses, that is something that we'll take into consideration during review. And then we also look at things like first generation student status, legacy status, and other factors like that. And then the final piece to the review process would be looking at your individual story. So this really comes through in the required essay that's built into NC State's application. So this is definitely your chance to share with us any information you feel is important for us to know that helps us learn more about you. And then finally, the last piece I'm going to talk about is scholarships and financial aid. So at NC State, I mentioned applying early action is the best way to get priority consideration for our scholarships. So basically, NC State has a portal called PAC Assist, and this is where you'll be able to log in and view the different scholarships that you're eligible for. And you can also apply for scholarships directly through that website. And then 2 other scholarships to talk about. So these are NC State's notable scholarships, the Park and the Goodnight. These do require a separate application to their program, and they also require an application to NC State by the November 1st early action deadline. The Park Scholarship is a full ride for students, And it's based on a lot of things like academic merit and leadership demonstrated in high school. And it's also a program for students once they're on campus. The Goodnight Scholarship is specifically for North Carolina residents who are interested in STEM majors, and then also for students who are from low to middle income backgrounds. And Goodnight, I believe, currently covers about $20,500 per year, so also a very large portion of the cost of attendance for NC State. And it's also a program for students to join throughout their time at NC State. And then lastly is the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. So it does open up October 1st of each year, and we definitely encourage students to submit this as soon as possible because funds are distributed on a first come, first served basis. So that is just a general overview of NC State and our application process. One last thing that I want to note is that we do have some virtual tour opportunities on our website. So we do have a tour of main campus and Centennial campus and a virtual tour of housing. So that's all on NC State's website if you did want to learn a little more about what campus looks like, and then also hear little blurbs from our current students about their favorite parts of campus. So that is the presentation. And at this time, if you all have any questions, feel free to post them and I'm happy to answer.
So we've had lots of questions while you were presenting. Thank you so much. So the first question is, do applicants declare a major when applying for NC State? If yes, how specific of a major is the major a factor in acceptance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, students do declare a major when they're applying to NC State. So for example, if you're applying to engineering and you're accepted, you'll come directly into the engineering program. In terms of how specific that should be, for some of our majors like engineering and life sciences, as well as our business school or management, all those programs have what's called like first year programs. So instead of having to pick the exact type of engineering you want to study, you would pick engineering first year. And then basically what that means is if you're accepted to state, you would be an engineering student, but you have time to explore the 18 different types of engineering that we offer in that first year before picking your specific concentration. And that's very similar for some of our other majors as well. So you do have to be specific in knowing generally what major you want to study, but not necessarily what specific type, if that makes sense. And then if you do come to NC State and decide that the major you are in is not a great fit for you, we do have a process called the change of degree application, where you can work with your advisor to request to change your major.
Are there different acceptance criteria for different majors?
So all of our majors would have the same, we would be looking for the same things. So kind of what we talked about in terms of what we look for in our applicants with the A's and B's and advanced courses, that will be consistent across all of our programs. The only exception I would say is for our STEM majors, because they are fairly competitive at NC State. We would want to see that you have a math class each year and that you have pre-calculus or calculus or higher during your senior year.
Okay, cool. So our next question is, what would be the major for a park ranger?
Yeah, so we do have a College of Natural Resources at NC State, and they do have a Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Management major. So that's just the first thing that came to my mind. But I'm sure there are a lot of other majors within our natural resources department, like forest management, for example, that could appeal to that career interest.
Okay, so our next question is, what majors or classes would a student take if they're interested in being a sports broadcaster?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at NC State, we do have a communication media major. So it's within our humanities and social sciences department. So that can be a great fit if you're thinking about like public communications, broadcasting type thing. And then we do also have a sport management program. which may also relate to that sports broadcasting piece.
Is housing guaranteed for all 4 years of study?
So housing is not guaranteed for all 4 years, but beyond your first year, you can still apply to live on campus. And usually housing will work with students to see what availability looks like. I know personally for me, I lived on campus through my junior year, so there was availability, but I think it just depends each year. But I will say that off-campus apartments, or a lot of them, are also located very close to NC State. And the bus system does run to some of those apartment complexes. So where I lived in my senior year, even though it was off campus, it was still very easy to get to and from.
So many colleges have already announced a shift to test optional in the UNC system, just announced some changes in the minimum admissions requirements. Will there be any adjustment to NC State's test score reporting policy requirement?
So I would say as of right now, I'm not aware of any changes. So I can't speak to that a whole lot just because as of right now, there's no official word of any changes that'll come from NC State.
Okay. Are you able to apply into 2 schools, for example, the College of Natural Resources and the College of Engineering?
So you could pick a first and second choice major, but you can only be accepted into one program. So if you were interested in double majoring, then you would pick whichever your preference would be. And if you're accepted into that major, once you're on campus, you can apply to add one, but you can only apply and be accepted into one specific major.
Okay. At NC State, how can you double major and minor? What combination can you do?
Yeah, so a lot of it will depend on your interests and like the course scheduling. So really you can pick majors across different fields and work with your advisor to figure out what that would mean in terms of how many courses would be added to your degree completion. So really you can mix and match however you see fit. It's just a matter of like what that means in terms of the additional courses you would take and if that's something that you're comfortable with.
Okay. Can you talk about attempting to transfer to NC State? I saw on the transfer website that 20% of students transferred in NC State. Are there any academic advisors prospective students have access to in order to plan that transfer process now as a high school student?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad that we have this question. So yes, a great number of students on NC State's campus did come in as transfer, and any of our admissions counselors can talk more about that process. So I'm happy to share my contact information and you can get in touch with me personally or just reach out to our admissions office and any of us can speak to that transfer process. But for transfer students, one of the biggest things that we look for is that you have at least 30 transferable college credit hours completed before you apply to NC State. And then there are certain courses that we recommend depending on the major you're applying into, but we can definitely share more specific guidance. If you'd like to reach out, we do have one-on-one virtual appointments that we're offering, or if you'd prefer to reach out by email or phone, that's an option as well.
Can you talk a little bit about the C3 program?
So C3 is another great pathway for students who are looking to transfer. I honestly don't have a ton of information on it because it's coordinated through a different office, but the contact for that program, her name is Holly, and I'd be happy to share the contact information for her after our session today.
Okay, great. Let's see. Are merit-based scholarships based on the ACT or SAT scores? If so, will there be any changes or adjustments considered for 2021?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't believe any NC State has any specific scholarships that are like automatically tied to SAT or ACT scores. I would say our financial aid office could probably speak better to that question. It is a separate department on campus, so I don't have too much specific information on how scholarships are awarded.
Okay. Do you have any merit scholarships that international students are eligible for?
So unfortunately for international students, we do not offer scholarships or financial aid. So unfortunately for that piece, it would be a no.
Okay. What percentage or even a rough estimate of students on your wait list for admissions ultimately get accepted? And by what date should these waitlisted students expect to hear back?
Yeah, so for waitlisted students, essentially after May 1st, which is our confirmation deadline, that's when we'll have a better idea of if spaces became available for the fall semester. So between May 1st and June 15th is when we would start to reach out to students on our wait list if we can offer spaces for fall. So June 15th would be the date you would hear from us in regards to the wait list. And then in terms of likelihood to be admitted off the wait list, it really depends each year. A lot of it depends on how many students confirm their enrollment for the fall. And that's not something we always have like a solid idea of until that May 1st deadline comes around. So there's not really a specific percentage because it'll just differ each year.
Does NC State defer students or just waitlist?
We do defer students, yes. So for students who apply early action, there is potential for them to be deferred into our regular decision applicant pool. And basically with students who are deferred, it means that we feel they'd be a good fit, but we'd like to see a little more additional information from them, like mid-year grades mainly, before making that final decision.
Okay, great. Let's see. If I'm looking into majoring in environmental engineering, would I be in the engineering school or the College of Natural Resources?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that major is under our College of Engineering.
Okay. Would you be able to speak a bit about the Poole College of Management? What are the different programs within this school?
Yeah, so with Poole College of Management, we have business administration and then a lot of different concentrations within business. So some of those would include finance, human resources, supply chain management, and then many others. And then we also have accounting as one of our majors within that college, and then also another more like finance specific program, like economics.
Okay. Can you share the student body demographics?
So we do have, it's NC State's first year facts. So that's what we print out each year for the incoming class. So we do have that information on the admissions site, and I'm happy to post the link into the chat box after we chat today.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions? Just give you all a few minutes to brainstorm. Is there a minimum GPA requirement?
So there's not a minimum GPA requirement. Typically when it comes to GPA, what we look for would be the grades you're receiving in your courses, and we like to see those A's and B's, and then the level of the course. And like I mentioned, we do like to see that you're taking some advanced level courses and challenging yourself.
Okay. How much do extracurricular activities affect a student's application?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that's part of our holistic review. A lot of times that can give us good information about your interests as well as what your involvement outside of the classroom looks like. So it's definitely a piece of that review process. Like I mentioned, academics is typically at the front of review, but those extracurriculars are definitely something that supplements that process.
Okay. What is the average graduation rate and retention rate?
Yeah, so our first year retention rate is about 94%. So that would be the number of students who stay after the first year. And then in terms of graduation rate, we do have 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year. And I believe our 6-year, which is what like is typically used, is about 76 to 77%. But I can also look that up just to verify and post that information in the box for y'all.
Awesome. Is there an early decision date, i.e. binding?
No, there's not for NC State. So we have early action, but that's non-binding and it's not early decision.
Okay. With NC State being so large, what's the average class size for the Gen Ed courses?
Yeah, so the average class size overall is about 35 students. For the general education courses, it'll definitely depend on the course, but some classes may have 100 or 200 students in a lecture hall style, but that'll just depend on like the timing of the course and what course it is. So there's not a specific average for gen eds, but I would say those are typically larger. But then across the board, 35 is the average student class size.
Okay. Do you all have a preference of the ACT over the SAT?
We do not have a preference. Whichever you're most comfortable with, that is perfectly fine.
Okay. So NC State is in the research triangle with both Duke and UNC, who are similarly excellent institutions. What makes NC State a better choice for a student versus Duke or UNC?
Yeah, so I would definitely say it'll depend on the student and what the best fit is for you. So if NC State doesn't offer a specific major that you're interested in, it may not be the best fit. So I would say it definitely depends on the student. With NC State, one of my favorite parts about us is the community, and it being a large institution, there are a lot of opportunities and ways to find like smaller groups that you really click with or that really fit different interests of yours. But ultimately, I think it would come down with what your interests are and what's really the best fit for you.
What percent of students at NC State are from North Carolina?
Yeah, so currently our out-of-state population is about 13 to 16%. So as a UNC system school, we do have an 18% cap on out-of-state students, meaning we'll have 82% in-state students. During the review process, that we look at in-state, out-of-state the same way. It's more for tuition purposes when that comes into play, but we do have about 82% in-state.
Okay. What advice would you give a student who meets all the metrics, good transcript, good test scores, good extracurriculars to stand out in a pool of applicants?
Yeah, for sure. So my personal advice would be the essay that NC State requires, as well as optional essays. So those are one of my favorite pieces of reading student applications because it's a chance for me to really try to connect to you and understand more about who you are. So I would absolutely say the essay portion would be where students can really stand out and share circumstances or interests that they don't necessarily feel like they can expand on in other parts of the application.
So I'll just give folks, oh, here's another one. What percent of undergraduate students are international students?
That's a great question. I don't know that specific breakdown from out of state, but that's something else I'm happy to get information on to share with y'all.
Which country has the highest number of students outside of the US?
Yeah, so outside of the US, I believe China is our #1 for international students right now. And we do have in our first year facts, which I'll share with you all, the top 10 countries for international students.
Okay. Are there study abroad programs at NC State?
Yes, so we do have over 200 different study abroad programs. So definitely a range of areas that you can study in and length of program as well.
What percent of the student body studies abroad?
I believe from the latest statistics, it was over 20%, but I can get that exact number for y'all as well.
Okay, if y'all have any final questions, go ahead and type them into the chat box. I'll just give you a minute or two. How is the Greek culture on campus in terms of fraternities and sororities? Does it seem dominant?
So with fraternity and sorority life, I think we have about 50 different organizations, but maybe it's like under 20% or so are in fraternity and sorority life. So I would definitely say if it's something you're hoping to get involved in, you can certainly join. But from my experience on campus, I had some friends who were involved in fraternity and sorority life. I was not personally. So there's definitely a lot of mixing and mingling of students regardless of your affiliation.
Let's see. We had a question. Where can we access this recording for viewing later? We will be posting this on, actually, I'll let Miss Jackie take that question.
So there are two ways where you can access our recordings. You can go to the calendar where we have all of our admissions info sessions. There is a sheet called recordings. You click the link and it will take you to our YouTube channel. Or you can just go directly to YouTube, type in Game Plan Colleges, and all the sessions that we had are on there.
Awesome.
And if you if you subscribe to our channel, you'll be updated with each of the videos that we upload.
All right, well, I think that is all. Thank you so much, Kaylee. Oh, no, we have another question. How often do students acquire internships while at NC State?
Yeah, so I would say it depends on the major and also the student. So some students may prefer to be more involved with our student organizations and clubs, while others lean more towards internships or have a mix of both. So I don't know the exact percentage, but it's definitely more what the preference of the student would be. When I was at NC State, I was more involved with internships than with student clubs, but for each student, it's a little bit different.
Okay, well, I think that's it. If you attended this webinar, I'm going to post obviously you attended, I'm going to post a link in the chat. If you wouldn't mind filling out our survey for this workshop, we're going to be raffling off a $20 gift certificate, one each week. So the more sessions you attend and the more surveys you fill out, the higher the chance that you'll be selected. If Kaylee, would you mind putting your email address in the chat in case anyone has any one-on-one questions?
All right, yes, so if y'all have any other questions or want to follow up about any information that I talked about today, please feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to talk with you.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. Thank you all so much for coming, and we will see you at our other sessions at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. every day of the week.